Well, we'll see if anyone else shows up. We may have a corner on the market here.
Which one? They're for the comp plan. That's the second.
The second one.
Yeah. So that.
Terry Wise.
Oh, I see. Yeah, the comp plan should follow. There's two parts to the first part. The second part is. This is what the legislature. So the last session.
I read that today.
So we're gonna talk. That's good.
Yeah, we read that, but I've been aware of that stuff, but man, when I read that today, I want to hit myself right there. I got handy to you. Some of that are ridiculous. I was looking on that, I was like, for zoning map, have you guys gotten to that point where you've got?
No.
We're not
even close. Wednesday evening. We just had a first open house on the plan last Wednesday evening at Pierce College.
Oh,
So we're in the part of community outreach, getting support on the back and thing. We're working on some things, looking at what the bills mean and how that affects what's going to happen. We're going to try that. It's going to go how we all got to do. Easily. What it's going to be.
right. 280 well, like that. There's a lot of, I think some of the design guidelines gotta be, clear and objective. What's clear and objective?
It's ironic when it's surprising they had to put that in legislation because it goes actually back in one case. So we have to write things so that the community pick up it says I need to do this, see the agenda, like I'm happy to write you. 95%, 90% there. Close to it all. So what do you really look at? This no, they didn't want us. Somebody else. I really I know this, I do this. It's surprising I put it in legislation.
How you doing, sir? Well, I'll be here for a while. We'll see if you guys put me to sleep or not.
Okay, if you're gonna be here, let's go.
Okay.
So it's amazing from having to sing that again.
I wasn't some my daughter.
Is there like a timeline, like maybe on the city website of when that?
Milestone.
Yeah, for milestones are happening.
And that's part of what we talked about. And I think there was a. And we spell line. You're talking about. That's really what's going on. Here's what the process. I will put that. Renaming that.
Well, I'm glad to put a face with the name. Oh yeah, everywhere. No, it's just that, I have been a land use consultant for a while. I read we haven't done a lot of work, and it's just been recently with some of our clients and some things that we've been working on. So then I start sticking my nose in, and so. We can do that.
Gonna be gone for all the month.
Landowners, developers, landowners to navigate through and have sort of. And, of course, I would be at good zoning, and so oftentimes, this piece is getting myth, because they're not, they don't take a consideration for litigation.
Okay, let's go ahead and start tonight's Puyallup City Council study session for Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. It is now 6:30 p.m. and glad that everyone is here to go over these important items. We have before us here is the Environmental and Sustainability Action Plan update and the Comprehensive Plan update as well. And so at this point, will everyone join me as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And City Clerk, can you please call the roll call?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Ferris,
I believe she's absent.
Councilmember Castema,
Present.
Councilmember King,
He's absent as well.
Councilmember Palmer. Present. Deputy Mayor Whitting,
Present.
Councilmember Dorr,
She's absent tonight.
Mayor Johnson.
And present, thank you. Well, we do have a quorum. So I don't think we're gonna be voting on anything, but we still got a quorum in case we decided to do any voting spontaneously. We can certainly take care of that. Okay, a council before us, we have an agenda before us. It's just really basically one item, 1A and 1B. And if I can get a motion to approve the agenda, we'd move forward in that.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the agenda before us tonight. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Great, thank you. And then City Clerk, is there any motion that we need on here to approve any past agendas, or is that not necessary on this? Okay, so I'll make sure. I saw some other paperwork here. I didn't know if I missed it or something. Okay, good. Well, with that being the case, let's go right into item 1A. We have a presentation by our senior planner, Chris Beal, who's going to talk to us about the Environment and Sustainability Action Plan update. And I did have a chance to meet with him prior to coming in, and I understand it may be a riveting presentation. So we'll look forward to that. Chris, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Council. Chris Beal with the city's Planning Division. Tonight is meeting number 3 on the Environment Sustainability Action Plan. This is a mid-project check-in before we go into our next and final phase of public outreach. If you guys remember, we met with you as a project kickoff with the council in February. We ran a public survey in May. We came back to you in June with the results of that, and now we are here with an initial draft of the Environment Sustainability Action Plan prior to releasing to the public review. First slide. All right, so tonight meeting goals. We have got a couple things in your package you'll find. The first one is just an actual draft of actions as part of the ESAP. The second one is a document that's got a couple of different things. It's a council and community comparison sheet. So it's a spreadsheet that kind of takes the top 10 actions that we heard through the public survey this spring, and then the suggested actions from our last meeting, our last council meeting. We took the minutes. I actually went back and rewatched that meeting. We boiled down the comments into some manageable topic areas. And then we provided a cross comparison with the IDs and the actions that are listed there to show how those comments were previously addressed. And then there's the PowerPoint that we're taking a look at tonight. So tonight, the main meeting goal here is to receive feedback from council on anything that you'd like the public to weigh in on. This is not the last time you're going to see the Environment Sustainability Action Plan. In fact, there's 2 more meetings. We'll come back with you. The plan currently is to come back following the public outreach, public comment period, and then for final adoption. So the key components of the ESAP planning process, as you'll remember, the first couple of things that we did was a risk and vulnerability assessment for the community. We did a greenhouse gas community emissions profile, and tonight we are at the draft goals and actions review, followed by the final adoption and implementation of the ESAP. And then one thing that we did want to mention, and we'll talk a little bit about this, I believe, on the second agenda topic in terms of legislative updates. If you'll remember, the original scope of this project was to assist with our comp plan update. in the middle of this process, there was a fairly significant legislative change that does require cities under GMA to plan for climate resiliency. And so there's actually a future action development of a climate element that will be done at a later date. That's not due until 2029. So that's a little bit ways out. So the development of comp plan policies as part of this project is probably going to be deferred until we develop that element. Again, this is, I think I've kind of gone over this, but I'll just run through the last couple of items here in fall. We'll be back with you after we do a public comment period. We're going to be using a virtual online platform for that. It's like an interactive storybook type of software that our consultant will pay for. And it'll basically produce a really nice looking online version of what you guys are looking at for people to review and comment on. We'll go to City Council meeting number 4, which will basically come back and report out what we heard from that public comment period. And if there are any themes that the public is feedbacking on that maybe are missing or that maybe people support or don't support. And then the council can refine the ESAP and prepare it for final adoption right after that. Okay, so to the meat of the topic tonight, the draft ESAP plan has 27 different actions and 6 different focus areas. And how we got here, essentially is this comparison sheet. We tried to listen to what the council's given us feedback on in the last couple of meetings and address those with specific actions. And then we took the top 10 actions from the community survey and tried to match those up with specific actions. Our consultant started out basically with sort of a large bucket, right? They do this consulting for agencies all over the Puget Sound. And they said, here's sort of, 60 to 80 sample policies that other agencies have adopted. We took a look at that. We tried to refine it with the community survey and the council feedback. We had an internal staff workshop as well with key people that would be responsible for helping to implement the plan to see what's feasible and how city staff feels about some of those actions. And we kind of whittled this down. I would say that we took the focus of trying to make this actionable with specific steps and not sort of things that are a little bit more policy based, but specific actions. And we tried to make that fairly manageable and focus it in those 6 different areas that we've talked to you guys about before. And those 6 areas are buildings and energy, ecosystem health, community resiliency and well-being, overarching municipal, consumption and waste, and transportation and land use. So those are kind of the big bucket areas in which we build our goals off of, and then we place specific actions underneath those, and you'll see that formatted in the ESAP. So I won't read through every one of them because I don't know that we have the time or desire to read every single policy out of here. But my goal here was to probably just kind of high level go through each of the draft actions within each of the focus areas of the plan. And then at the end, receive feedback from the council on maybe things that are missing. Mayor, if you want me to stop after each of these, we can do that as well. That's up to you. So the overarching and municipal, these are kind of broader goals, but it also relates back to what we're doing here as an agency or what we do as a sort of a corporate entity. So there's 5 different actions in here. The highlights of that, one would be to have a sustainable purchasing policy. So we have purchasing policies in the city. Part of that would be to focus some of that purchasing policy on sustainability when we make large purchases or small purchases. City fleet electrification. So we already do quite a bit of this in terms of hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles. But this would also set out that that's kind of our goal is for vehicles within our city fleet to be EV or electric, where the technology is available, where it best assists the city to complete our services, our core services for the city. Decarbonizing city buildings. This is kind of a little bit part of legislation as well. But a future action would be to come up with the carbon footprint of each of the city's buildings and facilities and determine what those carbon footprints are and how we can reduce the carbon footprint of those city buildings and facilities over time. And then this will actually probably be part of our climate resiliency element in the future, but doing a better job at tracking our GHG inventory and monitoring that progress on whatever goal we decide as part of the climate element in the future.
Chris, could you define the acronym of G so I can understand that?
Oh, GHG, greenhouse gas.
Thank you.
Yep. Sorry about that.
Councilmember Kesselman.
Certainly. Do you mind defining purchasing policy, sustainable purchasing policy? What does that mean?
Well, let's look at the actual language within it. So the draft policy says update our sustainable purchasing policy that includes evaluation criteria for sustainability practices and waste reduction goals for office supply vendors. So it would update our current policy, which we do actually have a sustainability policy, but it would help supplement that.
Fine, it sounds extremely vague. Can you give me an example?
Let's use paper as an example. If we were to buy reams of paper for a printer, maybe the sustainability policy would say we would favor recycled over partially recycled, something like that.
Okay, fine, thanks.
Or it might be also possibly buying less plastic
Yeah.
type deals and more, whatever.
If we have city events, maybe we don't use plastic utensils for that event or something
Sure,
like that.
sounds good. All right, thank you.
Okay. So the next area is buildings and energy. So it has 3 draft actions under this section. Promoting electric heat pumps. That would be probably mostly through PSE, whatever kind of financial programs are there. We would help to try to amplify and promote any of those incentives that are available and out there for either grants or financial incentives for homeowners and business owners. Promoting financial and permitting incentives. One of the things that I think a council member mentioned before was making our trying to remember the name of it, the expedited permitting program, maybe adding solar panels to that program to make those a little bit easier and quicker to permit. So providing those, again, promoting financial incentives and permit incentives. And then supporting the generation, transmission, and use of locally distributed renewable energy. So that's things like community solar panel installations, working largely again with other agencies that are doing this work. Not creating new things, or we're not really in the business of energy generation or anything like that, but we would help to promote those and help to support those, particularly for city facilities. The third focus area is under transportation. So we have 3 draft actions under transportation. We have an active transportation plan or bike infrastructure plan, also includes a pedestrian infrastructure plan. We haven't done a great deal of progress on that plan in the 6 or 7 years that we've had it. So this would help support and, basically say to support and accelerate the implementation of our bike infrastructure plan and expand available biking infrastructure to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and promote community health. Developing an EV infrastructure plan. So that would be to look at our city facilities, look at maybe areas of the right of way or the community or city parking lots where EV infrastructure might be best used or utilized, and also probably looking at areas of the community that are underserved by EV infrastructure. I know it was mentioned at a previous council meeting, serving folks that live in multifamily housing might be a goal. So it would basically be a future action to develop a EV infrastructure plan, hire a consultant to come up with some actions, and then it actually would probably put us eligible for some current grants that are out there with Department of Commerce, something that we actually just recently looked at. And then the last one here is to consider climate and weather related impacts of making road and transportation infrastructure upgrades. As weather related events change over time and already are changing over time, making sure that we're taking those into account when we come up with capital facility plans or looking at transportation master plans or goals therein. So that's not something that we've had in our comp plan before, but I would envision that being probably something in the future as well. Okay, ecosystem health is the next one. We have 7 different draft actions within ecosystem health. A couple of them that are paired up here, tree canopy and planting programs. Essentially, that would kind of go along with the council's initiative to get us recertified under Tree City USA and promote the value of tree canopy and planting programs, and then the management of our forestry infrastructure. Conserving water and promoting green infrastructure, including incentives for green infrastructure. Council had given some feedback about wanting to have specific financial incentives for things like rain gardens or pervious pavers. We do some of that work right now in terms of like help with design or help with connection with contractors. There was a suggestion that maybe we look at a financial incentive. I would assume that's something in the range of utility billing. So yeah, that we tried to address that comment previously. Protecting farmlands, that obviously is a big thing that we heard. We hear that pretty much all the time. Anytime we have a comp plan update, when we did this survey, we heard that as a strong priority is protecting farmlands, and then restoring salmon habitat, which is obviously a regional goal. It makes a lot of sense to live within this plan. All right, the next one, consumption and waste. So helping to expand recycling and composting within the community, supporting reuse and reducing waste. That's obviously another goal that I think we've heard from the community. And then another one that council has mentioned pretty consistently since the beginning is making sure that we have a goal on litter reduction and supporting litter reduction and cleanups and management of community litter to keep our community safe and clean. So those are the 3 draft actions within that policy goal. And I think this is the last one, the community resilience and well-being. So there's 6 draft actions within this policy or focus area. Incentivizing adaptation improvements for businesses and homeowners. So things like weatherization, finding programs that are already out there, financial programs that are already available, and helping to amplify the message of the availability of those financial incentives. Again, not trying to create new programmatic things that might cost the city more money, but just trying to find where there's grants or programs out there for low income or senior homeowners to help them weatherize and help keep their homes in good condition, as well as protect them from the elements. Another one that came up during the community survey and during city council's feedback is wildfire risk assessment. Obviously, we're kind of right in the middle of that wildfire season, and we see a lot more urban fires within the community. We do have some areas based on the DNR's mapping where we've got wildland and urban interface. We've got large tracts of parkland or open space land that are well wooded and could be at risk for fire. So this is something where we would bring a consultant in, probably with the assistance of Department of Natural Resources, to help educate the community and help come up with a risk assessment and where those areas are, and to help educate folks what they can do to manage their wildfire risk. The last couple ones here, community education. That's obviously probably an overarching goal throughout this entire plan. Community education around the changes in the community and the benefits of environmental and sustainability. Something council mentioned last time as well. Cooling and air quality relief centers. So times in our temperature spike, we had that heat wave in 2021 that killed a lot of people. We have air quality issues when we have wildfire events. People that don't have the ability to get out of that or don't have housing that can provide filtered air, or even programs like the health department and clean air agency have provided programs in the past to provide filters and box fans for people to use indoors. Those type of things would be actions we would see under this. And then the last one, something that we did, I think, hear from the community during the survey is improving food security and sustainability, particularly around things like community gardens within our public parks and public spaces. So that's part of our community and wellness and well-being goal. So the next steps, those are kind of a high level overview. Again, this is kind of a mid-project check-in. We would revise the draft actions based on, any kind of consensus feedback from the council tonight. Again, this is just right before the next period of public review. So we would post this online. We post this through the city social media and try to promote the availability of the plan online and asking folks to weigh in on this to help advise the council on what the final plan should say. Our consultant will prepare a report after the closure of that plan. We'll probably run that for about 3 weeks, maybe a little bit more, depending upon when we get that out. But the intention is to run that throughout most of October. Our consultant will prepare a report based on the public input and feedback. And we give the council that report in November. Probably the first meeting in November is the current goal, with the current goal of trying to turn around a resolution for final adoption in the single meeting that council has scheduled in December. And then again, in the future, we would move into implementation of the ESAP based on council's priorities and budgeting for the actions within the ESAP and us being able to find grants to help implement that. And then again, just to prime the council on the development of the climate and resiliency element. This is a few years off, to be honest with you. It's a mid-cycle requirement, and that's by House Bill 1181. That's not due until 2029. So we're a little ways off. We probably won't start that type of element work until probably 3 or 4 years from now, after the current comp plan update cycle is over. But we do know the Department of Commerce has money out there to help assist us when we're ready to do that. And that was part of the House bill process. So yeah, that's what we have tonight. And again, open to feedback, open to any kind of questions you might have. But again, just keep in mind that you guys will see this again. You'll be able to make any final changes to this after the public feedback. and then make changes to it at the final adoption. So this is kind of a mid-cycle point.
Great, thanks, Chris. Just some initial comments from me, and then I can open it up for my colleagues. I think all of this has some value. I guess the question I would have for city staff is how much energy do we want to put in all of these? I know you did pare this down, and maybe it's pared down enough to where staff could handle every area here and do it efficiently. But if I were to rate each of these in order of as you were going through it, which one was kind of moving me? The first one was the ecosystem health. I loved about everything on that one. That was my number one emphasis of putting a lot of energy into that. Tree canopy, conserving water, restoring salmon habitat, protecting or preserving farmland. To me, that's like ringing the bell all the way through as a high priority, which I think reflects the community. My number two, I would pick in terms of putting a lot of energy in would be the waste consumption. I specifically like, again, litter reduction. What can we do to diminish litter reduction? I really like this support reuse and expand recycling and composting. One that kind of really struggles, and I don't know how to answer this, but I cringe every time I have to throw a bottle in the garbage. Used to be able to recycle bottles. Now they don't offer recyclable bottles. So I just think, is there recycling for bottles? I don't know. So that was number two. Number three of as I was kind of going through this was the building and energy, but only the first two kind of moved me. I like the promoting of the electric heat pumps and then some kind of financial and permitting incentives. I think it's great to be able to offer that to the folks that want to participate. The fourth one that I thought was kind of a next in line would be the community resilience and well-being, specifically the 2 points, the first point and the third point, incentivizing adaptation and improvements for business and homeowners, and then community education. Sometimes just that community education is like, oh gosh, I didn't realize, you could save money by doing this, or just some tips that might help us on that. That would be the fourth one. The fifth one I had was the transportation. And the one that kind of stood out to me, I wasn't quite sure about the future climate and weather related impacts of making infrastructure upgrades. I'm kind of a little bit obscure on that, but I do like the first one, which is improve and expand bike infrastructure. I think get people out riding bikes and walking is a fantastic opportunity. So I think that's one good point to look at. And then I think the last one in priority of action points, again, I think all these have value, but trying to prioritize staff and energy and outputs would be number 6, would be the overarching municipal. The only one that kind of really stood out to me in terms of, something to put priority is a sustainable purchasing policy. I do think we could set examples by cutting back on waste type fillers or packaging or whatever, just more of a principle, but might be difference. But those are some of the feedbacks I think are strong. And again, all of these have some value, but the ones, as I've shared, I think could prioritize as maybe higher energy, better return. And then if we have extra time to work on some of the other ones, maybe we do that as extra curricular activities. So open it up for council if you had any. It looks like Deputy Mayor had some comments. I'll refer to Deputy Mayor.
Pardon me if I sound like a frog, but I sound like a frog. I have just a couple of questions. We're working on this sustainability plan, but you commented that we'd have to kind of go through this process again for the comp plan. And so just procedurally, is there a reason why we can't kind of wrap this up and pull together the components we need for the comp plan and in the process of doing the sustainability plan?
Well, the main issue, Deputy Mayor, is that there is not published guidance yet on how to implement House Bill 1181. Department of Commerce has some preliminary guidance, but because of changes into the legislation at the last minute, I'm just going off memory off their website, they will not have final guidance for agencies to begin to do work on that until probably the 1st of next year, which part of the issue is that the other part of the issue is we don't have money in the budget in this project to write an entire comp plan element.
Okay, and the other question I had was, we talked about decarbonization of buildings and doing an inventory of our city buildings. And as I understand it, there's a clean buildings program that's required for the private sector as well. And I was interested in the possibility of offering the opportunity to partner to those that have big buildings in the city, such as Good Sam or the multi-care or the mall or the fair. We've got a lot of big buildings in town, and could we get some economies of scale for us and them if we partnered with them?
Okay. Deputy Mayor, were you completed in your comments, or did you give everything answered?
That was it for the moment.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chris. First of all, I gave you some comments, but it was only on the PowerPoint. I didn't actually look at the more detailed thing until I walked in here today. So forget what I sent you. I'm not going to go over that because there's obviously way more detail in this document than in the PowerPoint. And so I think almost all my questions were addressed by the detail that's contained in here. And I think this is very good. I think it's very comprehensive and very thorough. So, I think it pretty much hits on all the important pieces. So I'm very happy with it. I think it looks good. I really do think all of it's solid. There's a couple things I'll just go through it and just say a couple comments. In terms of the, starting on page 3, on the overarching, in terms of the greenhouse gas inventory, since we are pretty much tied to the county, we did that we didn't do a city specific, right? We pretty much just prorated the county's emissions. And I would imagine we'll continue to do that. So I do think I think in terms of tracking things, I think it would be nice to track things like the number of solar installations we have, number of heat pumps. If we have that information, the number of EV cars, I don't know if we can get all that information, but those 3 things right there are very tangible and more identifiable than, CO2 reduction, right? So I think tracking those 3 things would be really interesting and have some targets over time. So I think I just wanted to point that out and maybe focus more on those technologies and less on the actual greenhouse gases, because no one's going to really, think about that too much. And we don't have our own specific thing. Not that I want to add anything, but on transportation, we could add, a transportation oriented development. We're already doing it, right? Through our current plans, trying to increase density downtown, transit oriented. So that fits into the transportation piece here if we wanted to include it and then refer to some of our other plans. So that I think that would be a natural addition, just kind of a crosswalking thing that we're already doing, which is important to this effort. On the ecosystem health, on the green infrastructure, the one piece that's missing is we do have maintained stormwater infrastructure, and then we have in green infrastructure, we have incentivized, which is really for current householders, really. I think we need to have something either in one of those 2 bullets about constructing stormwater infrastructure. Councilmember Castleman and I have talked about this, actually going in and doing retrofits with green infrastructure for stormwater runoff off roads in particular. Roads are the problem, primarily. Roofs are to some extent, but roads, that's where most of the metals come, and that's where PAHs and 6 ppd, which is the significant thing. And so we have to do some of that anyway as part of our stormwater permit the next time around. So the actual construction of those retrofit projects. So that's not quite captured here. So I would want to include that in here. I think that's more powerful than the incentivizing with the individual householders, actually. Not that that's bad, but I think bigger payoff. Let's see, do I have anything else? Yeah, I think this is really good. You know, I like the EV thing. I think creating opportunities for EV charging. I mean, figuring that out and getting some installations. Oh, I have a note here. The EV plan talks about just on city-owned facilities, but couldn't we also add partners? I mean, I think we need to have charging stations, you know, like grocery stores, common places that people go, that gives them opportunity to charge while they're doing something else. And in particular, you know, people that live in multifamily, which may not have the ability to put in their own charging. You know, they may want an EV car, but they can't charge it. And so having these other opportunities will be really important for them to make that decision on whether they get a car or not. So, and there is going to be a ton of grants for us to get to install EV charging. So having a good plan and getting a hold of those grants and building those will be very important. So I think that's great. Same with the solar. I think that's fantastic. I do like the idea that community solar is very interesting. I was just reading about it the other day, and it provides the opportunity for residents to have solar energy without having it on their own roof. So they can buy into basically a community solar project. It's a cool idea. So I'm glad that's in here. And I think it creates more options on that front. So those are just a few of my comments, but as I said before, ignored what my other thing that was just on the PowerPoint. I think this is really good.
Great, thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Castleman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
I really have very little to add, if anything. I think my colleagues have brought up some very good points. Chris, I appreciate your effort into this. Question I have on EV infrastructure: how many charging stations do we have in Puyallup?
I don't have the count.
Okay, well, it's kind of along the lines with Councilmember Palmer, where on, you know, I think probably the thing we have to do is develop these more. And then, of course, we prioritize through our budgeting process because each one is going to cost money. But at that point, or just I think prior to that, we have to determine how we're going to measure every single one of these. So to see whether or not we're really making that much success, I think the EV infrastructure, for example, is if a person is looking for an electric car, I read the Wall Street Journal pretty much every morning, and it's just filled with these horror stories of people who take a trip from this point A to point B with electric car and the chargers aren't working, or the chargers are incompatible. You don't have the fast chargers. You don't have the Tesla chargers. I mean, unless that infrastructure is here, the goal that I don't know how realistic it is. I'm somewhat pessimistic on that, but you know that California by 2035 will not allow a combustible engine automobile to be sold. And yet the infrastructure, the energy infrastructure behind that, it's kind of really questionable whether it'll be there. So it's a hard thing to ask people to convert to EVs when it's nothing but a very difficult process, unlike all the gas stations that we have, et cetera. So I'm just very interested in that particular one. Other than that, just proceed as you have done and look forward to the other next iteration of this. And I like the fact that you are putting together very tangible things that will benefit the people of Puyallup, and simultaneously play into some larger goals that may be out there. But I think the more you coincide that with human behavior, and the more you coincide that with the benefit of individuals, that they notice saving in gasoline, heat pumps, for example, savings in energy, the more you align it with that kind of very innate personal benefit, the more successful this plan is going to be. So anyway, I look forward to your next iteration. Thank you.
Councilor Castle, I want to just tag on what you said. I know one of the big things that's important to you, and I think you were referring to that. I just want to clarify. We have all these ideas and plans, but if I heard you correctly, and I know, and consistent with other conversations early on when you first got elected here, is there a benchmark to tell if any of these have made a difference? Right? Is there a baseline? Is that kind of what you're kind of referring to a little bit? Because you asked how many charging stations are, how about all the other items? Do we have anything inventory of that? So that how do we know if we've actually moved the needle? Right. I think that's important as we're looking at this lean process, right? As we're moving forward as a city to make sure that we have all these great ideas, but is there a benchmark to know that we're actually advancing something, or are we just, we think we're advancing, or we hope we're advancing? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Councilor.
Yeah, just to build on that.
Yeah.
So it may be worth thinking about where we can have some initial targets in some of these actions. Because I think that's good to have some goals in terms of how we measure our success on, EVs, solar and heat pumps and on the other things too. I think we have some targets on tree planting, so that's good. So think of targets, but I agree, I've said this before too, in terms of the tone of the document, having that emphasis on the individual and cost savings. Like we really want to have that as a theme equal to, this isn't just about, reducing our emissions. Yes, it is, but it's really, we can get there through cost saving measures. And that's what we're trying to promote. We're providing these things.
And I think incentives are good too. I remember when we first bought our home in downtown Puyallup, and there's a certain gentleman in the room that sold that to us some 30 years ago, and built in 1932, and the house didn't have any insulation or knob and tube wiring, and the roof was pretty well worn, but Pierce County had some kind of a incentivized package where they'd come in there and assess what your house insulation was and what it needed. They would provide this 0% loan, with a lien on your house that at some point you would pay it off, and or if you refinanced, they would just pay it off then. But we got our whole house rewired. I think replumbed, insulated, and all done in an incentive package. And then when we refinanced the house at some point down the road, it was all paid off, and I got an upgraded deal, but it was through some incentivized that the Pierce County had. So I think those kinds of things could help people out. And save money, but get them a head start, and then they'll still make it right when they sell or pay it off at the low interest loan. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, all this stuff is 30% tax incentive right now. Most all of these technologies through the federal legislation. So there's incentives to be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So I think that, the way this is written, it's building off those existing incentives. So that's great.
and just to tag a little bit more, since it's kind of a study session, we're kind of informal here. Is there any conversation that we could partner with PSE?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that they have a lot of customers, but would they ever take like a targeted area if you had an interested municipality that says, hey, we want to partner with you, and they might bring the radar into a particular municipality and maybe do some pilot projects in there if we were the squeaky wheel that says, hey, consider us and as a pilot project. Maybe if we are proactive in our incentivized opportunities with PSE, maybe they'll choose Puyallup as an option that might start some kind of pilot project that might expand elsewhere.
It could be. I mean, I think, Puget Sound Energy has a state mandate to zero out their fossil fuel emissions for electricity they supply by whether it's 2035 or something like that. So they're greening up their entire electrical supply. And so they need to figure out how to drop all the natural gas supply of energy over time and increase that with solar and wind and other technologies. And so I think they're going to be looking for ways to do that. So community solar is a great example where that would be a partnership with Puget Sound Energy. Maybe we get a lot of these warehouses that have solar panels all over them and have a community solar project. So that would be a great example.
A question just for staff and maybe for council too. If we had this policy kind of refined, it's gone through the community process and there seems to be some enthusiasm and buy-in and some strength by the council, strength by the community, could we approach a PSC and say, hey, listen, can you take a look at us as an itemized pilot project to start maybe this program of incentives within our city? I wonder if they have that ability to do that as a large entity, or maybe they have to go blanket. I'm not sure. Any thoughts on that? Anybody?
See what Chris has to say.
Well, we can look into that. And the final version of the plan will actually have a couple different columns on the right-hand side of the table that you'll see that'll say like lead department, which I think is kind of consistent with our strategic plans. And
Yeah.
then it'll have a column about co-partners or partners to help us complete that. So like WSU Extension Center or PSE or large institutions or something like that. So that actually didn't make this final. We were still working on it and putting this agenda item together, but you'll see that in the next iteration.
I've got a hunch, and I'm just going to bounce this off city attorney, just for fun. It not holding you liable, just kind of more curious. If we, in that hypothetical scenario I just painted, do you think a power company has that kind of latitude as a kind of entity to be able to highlight on a project, or do you think they have to be more equity and say we have to apply this project all the way across all of our customers? Do you think there's even that possibility or precedence that they could do that, or is it just don't know?
Well, I don't know, can't think of any legal reason that they couldn't
Oh, okay.
partner with the city on
Okay.
a project.
Okay,
Nothing I can think of. I mean,
okay,
can't be discriminatory, but
of course.
they pick areas all the time to
Oh.
focus on. So
Okay, good. Yeah, I just didn't know if maybe there were some restrictions that they couldn't. So I think if that's the case, if Puyallup was shown to be a strong municipality with community buy-in that says, hey, we want to bring some of these incentives or cost savings to our constituents and businesses who are opting to come in. This is not mandated, right? So let's clarify that these are options. If they choose to enter into this, then they can partner with